Welcome to the life you crave. Simple and sustainable weight loss for women who have better things to do than diet. I'm your host, Leah Pinelli. I help ambitious, badass women stop overeating, overworking, and overgiving to lose weight from a place of love. I'll help you simplify weight loss, end your overwhelm, and create the life you crave. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Let's get started. Hello, Food Freedom for Fempreneurs Facebook group. Welcome. This is your weekly live training with me. This is for all of you who are here because you are all about freaking finding food freedom. Even if you feel like it is this super elusive thing that you can't seem to find, you can, and you're in the right place. So welcome. If you didn't know this already, you don't have to come here to catch all of these replays. I have a podcast called The Life You Crave, and it is available wherever you get your podcasts. I also dropped the link in the comments here so that if you're enjoying these trainings, if you're finding benefit to these trainings, but you don't always want to log into Facebook to catch these trainings. So I have a podcast that you can listen to all of these. The benefit to coming here to the Facebook group for these trainings is that you can ask questions and you can leave comments, even though I still can't see your comments on Facebook for some reason until after the live has been recorded. But that is a really cool feature. You can listen to the podcast and then you can jump into our Facebook group and ask questions, get support, participate in any trainings or challenges or anything that we are currently working on. So the podcast and these live trainings go hand in hand just for you. I started the podcast years ago because I am somebody who, I'm a podcast listener. I am not a Facebook live watcher. I really wanted a space and a community where we could come together to discuss all of this juicy stuff that I'm sharing with you each week on the podcast and in the Facebook group. So that's what this group is for. It is for community and support. The podcast is for your ease of listening. But again, it is the exact same thing that you're hearing here. It's uploaded into the podcast. The only downside is it sometimes can take a week or two for the podcast to be posted. So if you're just listening to the podcast, you'll be listening to it a little later than it was actually recorded live here. All right. Last week, we were talking about the 3 C's, what I call, this is my unique 3 C's approach to sustainable behavioral change, including food and eating behaviors, right? Because when it really comes down to it, your thoughts create your feelings. And your feelings are what drive your actions. And your actions give you every result that you have in your life. What happens for a lot of us is we recognize that we have behaviors that we don't love with food. And it can be with a lot of other things, by the way. Maybe you have a relationship with shopping, or a relationship with sex, or a relationship with gambling, or a relationship with yelling at the people you love. Whatever it is, we develop these behaviors, these patterns that we don't love, and we know they're not serving us. And so then what we try to do is we try to fix the problem, right, by focusing on our behaviors. And the truth of the matter is when we do that, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Well, because you're not actually getting to the root cause of the behavior. You're just focused on behavior. It's kind of like you're going to the doctor and you keep treating the symptom, but you're not treating the actual problem. I'm just making this up, but say you've got an allergy. I actually learned that I have an allergy to dog dander. Great. I have a dog, right? So what I do is I treat the symptom by maybe taking allergy medication, or I'm a big fan of using a neti pot. I'm treating the symptom. I'm not actually fixing the problem, which would probably honestly be getting rid of my dog, which I'm not going to do, right? The point is that, you can treat symptoms up to a point. But what happens for most of us with food and eating behaviors is we just end up in this vicious circle that we can't seem to get out of because we're addressing the behavior and not the actual root of the problem. So What is the root of the problem? The root of the problem is our thinking. And this month in the Fempire is my private exclusive community of women who are fast tracking it to food freedom. In the Fempire community, my clients learn how to actually stop overeating, stop over craving, and stop emotional eating. They learn everything they need to know in order to do that in 90 days. And then most people stay on to continue with the support of the Fempire community. Our focus for the month of February, which is right now. Happy Valentine's Day, by the way, y'all. It's February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. Our focus for the month of February is on these 3 C's. Every month, I teach my clients a foundational concept in truly transforming your relationship with food. Look, some of you might be new to me and you may not know this, but I struggled with overeating my entire life. I struggled with food and weight from basically the age of 9 until 39. So 3 solid decades. When I had my son in my 30s, I decided I did not have time for this. I had a full-time career, a baby that I loved. I did not have time for dieting. And so I gave up on it altogether and just, I just was like, okay, I'm going to be an overweight overeater for the rest of my life. And that's just what it is. And I'm super down with body diversity. So whatever, I'm just going to try to love this. And the truth is, I didn't hate my body. I know some of us do hate our bodies. My personal story, I didn't hate my body. I didn't love all of the excess, but I didn't hate it either. Because I do think that curvy women are sexy and I could see myself in that way. However, what I hated was my food obsession. And I don't mean an obsession in a clinical sense. I just mean I was always thinking about food. I was always hungrier than most people. I could eat as much as my 6'7" husband. I just knew this isn't right. Like, why can I eat so much? And then if I try to control how much I was eating, then I would be thinking about it, relentlessly thinking about it, and especially comparing myself to other people and noticing that other people could kind of eat and then relax. But I was kind of always left thinking about, I want to go back in for seconds or thirds or get more of X, Y, or Z until I was at the point of really feeling stuffed. So I share this with you because I know firsthand what it's like to struggle for decades with food and weight and to spend so much time really agonizing about your relationship with food and hating that. And then so constantly targeting the behavior, trying to change my behavior with food so that I could relax and honestly just be at peace with food. And I did learn how to do that kind of unexpectedly. And I won't go into the whole story, but I stumbled upon a few tools and I was shocked because these tools had nothing to do with dieting. It had nothing to do with portion control. It had nothing to do with willpower. And these are the exact tools that I teach in the Fempire. And these are tools that I'm teaching you all every week in these trainings. In the Fempire, this month, we're focused on a particular concept, which I call the 3 C's. The first C that we talked about last week is curiosity, the importance of curiosity and how most of us are not curious about our eating behaviors. Most of us are too busy feeling frustrated and maybe even shameful about our eating behaviors, and we are not curious about them. I talked at length last week for a full 30 minutes about why curiosity is actually far more effective. I actually argue that self-criticism and shame is not effective in the long run. Some people want to argue, yeah, it is effective. It motivates me in the moment. But the truth is that it doesn't last for long. It's a fair weather friend. Curiosity, on the other hand, works. It works every time. So if you didn't watch that live yet, I recorded that live last week. Usually these lives happen on Thursdays, but this week and last week I had a schedule conflict. So I did them on Fridays. So you can go back and you can check that out. It's also on the podcast. It's called the 3 C's, or if you just search for the 3 C's, part 1. There's a part 1 and part 2. Today is part 2. Last week was curiosity. This week, we're talking about compassion and courage. I'm going to get both of these in here together. But don't worry, I'm not going to shortchange you. But curiosity, compassion, and courage, all 3 go together when it comes to long-term sustainable change. So I already talked about curiosity last week. This goes with it. So make sure you go back and listen if you didn't. This week, what we're talking about is compassion. And I know, you guys, I know, because I used to be the same way. I know that a lot of us do not want to have compassion for ourselves, right? I learned this last year when I tried in the Fempire, the month of February. I taught the concept of radical self-love inspired by the work of Sonia Renee Taylor. She wrote a great book called The Body Is Not an Apology. And I was so inspired by her work. And last February, I was like, yep, we're doing radical self-love in the Fempire. And my ladies were like, oh, no, we're not. No, we're not. Because the truth of the matter is sometimes going from self-loathing, which a lot of us are really, like, we don't even want to look at ourselves in the mirror, right? We don't want to look at ourselves in photographs. So then the idea of going from, self-loathing to self-love is way too big of a leap. So this year, I'm like, okay, we're not doing that. We're not doing self-love this year. What we're going to do instead is we're going to really focus on this foundational concept of curiosity, compassion, and courage. And compassion, for a lot of us, it feels a little bit like love. We're like, no. And here's why. So many people think, and this is a mistake that we make, we think if I have compassion for myself, if I love myself, then I won't change. And I want to change, right? Like, I don't want to love myself at 210 pounds. I want to love myself when I'm 150 pounds, right? Like, I don't want this. And here's what I will first and foremost tell you. I'm going to get into compassion and why it's so important. But I really want to start by saying this to you. And I say this directly to my clients who make this argument. We don't have to hate where we are in order to change where we are. And I now live in New York. I did not have to hate San Francisco in order to want to move to New York, right? Like, you can see how New York and San Francisco, I'm not in New York City, by the way, I'm in Buffalo, New York. And I love Buffalo, by the way. I know a lot of people are baffled by that. I freaking love Buffalo. It's like, I can't think of any other city I'd want to live in more than Buffalo, New York, honestly. So I love Buffalo. I also love San Francisco. Always have. I am San Francisco for life, through and through. SFC. It's like my tattooed on my body. San Francisco. I love it. Now, if you ask me, like, which city do I like better, Buffalo or San Francisco? Honestly, it's kind of apples to oranges, but I love them for different reasons. And at this juncture of my life, I totally prefer Buffalo. Totally prefer Buffalo. Now, I won't get into why, but the point is that I don't have to hate San Francisco to love Buffalo. And I don't have to hate Buffalo to love San Francisco, right? It doesn't work that way. They are two totally different cities, and you can love both of them, but also still want to move from one to the other, right? I could decide I don't want to live in Buffalo anymore, and now I want to move to Sicily, which sounds kind of good to me. Like, I don't have to hate Buffalo to want to move to Sicily. I don't have to hate Sicily to want to move to Hawaii. You guys get the point. So you don't have to hate yourself in order to still want to transform yourself. So why is this important? This is incredibly important that you practice self-compassion for similar reasons to the reasons that I talked about last week, which were around how you cannot learn if you are anxious or fearful or feeling shame. And when we judge ourselves, when we shame ourselves, we feel fear and anxiety and shame. So you're not learning a new way of being with food in those moments. You're actually shutting down and you're just reinforcing old patterns. Compassion is complementary to the same idea, because if you don't have compassion for yourself, you will not learn as quickly or as efficiently as if you did have compassion for yourself. So here's what I'm talking about with this. I'm going to share with you, and I share this with my clients. These are a handful of quotes from a phenomenal book called The Confidence Code. Katie Kay and Claire Shipman, these are two reporters, journalists, who basically wrote an entire book on The Confidence Crisis in Women. And phenomenal book. I highly recommend it if you are female identified, if you know anybody who's female identified, and especially if you have some kids that you are raising who are female identified, read the book. Or it's not even female identified, really, just if you've been socialized as female, it's probably more important. They make the point about self-compassion, and they say this, and this was really, really powerful in our transformative process with food. The first is that they say self-compassion places our individual experiences in the framework of a shared human experience, right? So when we turn inward on ourselves and we're like, what is wrong with you? You ate the cake again. You ate the chocolate again. You overate the pasta again. You ate the bag of chips again. Like, why do you keep doing this? What is wrong with you? That general frame, the framing of what is wrong with you, implies that you are different than everybody else, that there is something wrong with you, that other people don't have this problem. When you place your experience within the shared framework of the human experience, just feel that for yourself. It's like, oh, right, I'm a human. I'm a human. Welcome to the human experience is something that I say to my clients all the time. It's like, yeah, you ate a whole bag of chips last night after you got home, having had a really, really emotional day, right? Like, I have one client who experienced a lot of grief and a lot of guilt all in the same day. Like, you know, a couple of things happened and she had a really heavy day. And then she went home and she ate a bag of chips. And you know why? Not because there's anything at all wrong with her. In fact, if anything, her brain's working perfectly. Her brain was experiencing pain. So if you follow my work or if you're part of the Fempire, you know very well that human brains are motivated by three things and three things only. All human brains, by the way, this is part of our shared human experience. We are motivated to seek pleasure and to avoid pain and to do it with the least amount of effort possible. So when you have a day like my client, where and it doesn't even have to be grief. Like, she's experiencing some really deep grief, but like, you could have just had a really stressful day. You could have had a day where you were completely ignoring all of your actual needs, your primal needs. Like, maybe you didn't get enough sleep, and maybe you didn't get enough nutrition. Maybe you didn't get enough water. Maybe you had your boss was a dick. Like, whatever's going on in your life. We have a lot of fempreneurs in here though. So, maybe you're stressed about not having enough clients, not having enough sales. All of those things are intense emotions. So that feels like, in the motivational triad, your brain is registering that as pain. This isn't really uncomfortable. Let's move away from this, right? Hardwired, move away from that discomfort and move toward pleasure. And the kicker is you need to do it with the least amount of effort possible. That's your brain. I mean, these are your brain's requirements. So the bag of chips is like super pleasure. And it's not just super pleasure for you. Chips are delicious, right? I mean, yeah, there might be some freak of nature out there who doesn't love chips, but most of us can agree that chips are pretty tasty, right? Chips taste delicious. And so your brain is going to go toward those chips to relieve the discomfort and the pain that you're experiencing. So what happens though is then we eat the chips and then we beat ourselves up and we feel awful. And not only that, you likely feel physically awful too, because chips are salty and usually made with lots of fats that we don't digest well and blah, blah, blah. So we probably don't sleep well and the whole freaking thing. So now you feel like physical shit and you're beating yourself up for it. And if you're enlightened like most of my clients, you know you're not supposed to beat yourself up for it. So then you beat yourself up for beating yourself up, right? Oh man, that whole thing, that whole cycle. So when you can put that experience, and I actually take my clients through 3 specific steps that I'm not going to teach here. You can join the Fempire if you want to know more about those 3 steps. But I take them through these 3 steps that really help them to access self-compassion in this moment. Because when you can recognize, oh, I ate the chips because I had a really freaking hard day and I'm a human. I'm a human being. And that's what we do. When you recognize that that is what's at play, then you can take the next step. Now, for those of you who are like, oh my God, that's like, I would just then go eat chips every day because now I'm just going to justify it. That is called permissive thinking, or justifying our behaviors. I am not in any way suggesting that you justify your behavior and then just stop there, because then you will continue to do those things over and over and just keep justifying it and keep feeling like ass. So I'm not suggesting that you do that. There are steps involved to actually take that moment and allow it to pivot the rest of your journey to do it differently. But self-compassion is the absolute first step. Now, Shipman and Kay in the book, The Confidence Code, they also say, and this is important, self-compassion drives confidence. And confidence, you guys, allows us to take the very risks that we need to take in order to build the confidence. So that has a whole application that I could talk about in the professional world, and that is what they're talking about. I want to talk about this in the context of eating and food, because what happens is it is risky to try again, right? So when you've had a moment where you've eaten the bag of chips and you feel like shit, there is risk the next day when you wake up to saying, I'm not going to do that again today. I'm not going to eat the bag of chips tonight, right? I might still be feeling the grief, or I might know I have another stressful day ahead of me, but I'm not going to do that again tonight. That is risky. Why is it risky? I bet you can guess already. It's risky because you've said that to yourself 90 bajillion times and you have betrayed yourself. And that self-betrayal feels awful. How many times have you woken up and said, I'm going to quote unquote be good today? I'm not going to eat the sugar today. I'm not going to eat the chips today. I'm not going to eat the leftover pizza that's in the fridge, whatever it is. And then you do it anyway. You have betrayed yourself over and over. And just like in any relationship, if somebody betrays you in a relationship, eventually either you stay and just allow yourself to be victim to it, or you move on. Most of us are like, I'm not going to tolerate being cheated on every day or being lied to every day, but we lie to ourselves every day. We cheat on ourselves every day. So making the commitment to trust yourself and to not eat the foods feels risky. If you don't have self-compassion, you are far less likely to try again because your confidence is shook. You're like, I'm not even going to bother saying I'm not going to eat the chips tonight because I know I will. You're not confident that you can do it. So eventually you stop making the promises. But with self-compassion, when you recognize I'm a human having a human experience, and I know there are people who have overcome this, because there are. It is totally possible to come through this, to come out on the other side of this. You just haven't figured it out yet. You just haven't had the right support. You haven't had the right community. You haven't had the right information. And you haven't had the right coach, honestly, to take you there. So self-compassion is what's going to drive your confidence to try again. And maybe this time you try differently. Maybe this time you reach out to me and say, Leah, I want to know about the Fempire because I will teach you exactly how to do this. Or maybe you just commit that I'm going to keep coming every week and I'm going to keep learning from Leah in these trainings and I'm going to do everything that I can to make this happen. And in these trainings, on these podcast episodes, I give y'all, I don't hold back. It's just a lot slower to try to piece it together yourself by listening to every podcast episode I've ever recorded. And of course, there are lots of pieces that don't get recorded on the podcast. But let's get back to these quotes. The third thing that Kay and Shipman say is self-compassion is a safety net that actually enables us to try for more and even harder things. We need confidence to keep trying. We need confidence to, and I don't want you to keep trying the same shit over and over that doesn't work, right? Don't they say that's the definition of insanity? I don't want you to do that. I want you to actually take the risk and have the confidence to try something you've never tried before. Try something brand new. And yes, I do want you to sign up for the Fempire. I'm not going to pretend like I don't, because I know that my program works. I know that I can get you there. But here's the truth. My number one priority in life, the thing that drives me, is not actually getting women to sign up for the Fempire. What really drives me is I want to see women empowered over their own lives, over their own decisions. I want to see women, honestly, in every seat of power. I want to see women running for office. I want to see women in leadership positions. And I know that in order to do that, we need to feel empowered, we need to feel confident, and we definitely cannot be distracted by food and weight anymore. And so this is my humble contribution to the cause, honestly, which is I know exactly how to get women there. And that is what I do. All I care about is that you are you are living in a space of food freedom so that you can focus all of your mental real estate on what really matters, which is making empowered decisions about your life and helping other women and girls feel empowered too. The last thing that I'll share with you that comes from Kay and Shipman is that self-compassion actually increases your motivation. And this is where people will say, no. If I have self-compassion, then I will not be motivated to change. The opposite is true. It increases motivation precisely because self-compassion cushions the failure. So if you jump off of a bridge and you kind of have a soft landing, but it wasn't the landing that you wanted to have, you might get up and go do it again, right? I mean, that's probably an awful analogy, but you get what I'm saying. I think you get what I'm saying. Self-compassion does not do what you think it does. Having self-compassion is not being permissive. Having self-compassion is not going to, create this life that you think that you think it's going to create for you, where you're just stuck because you have so much self-compassion. What I want you to take away from this training is that there is a difference between justifying your behavior and having self-compassion. Having self-compassion is the first step to transformation that we talked about last week. You couple it with compassion. Now you have a completely different approach to your relationship with food. And the last C, which I can honestly sum up I can still hit my mark. I'm not going over 30 minutes today, is courage. And the reason I include courage in here is because it takes courage. It takes courage to try compassion and to try curiosity. We have been so hardcore socialized to not have self-compassion when it comes to our eating behaviors or basically anything. We are so hardcore socialized to not being curious when it comes to our own self-sabotage. And it takes courage to try it. So just like last week, I want to invite you to try this for 7 days. Go back and watch last week. I had you practice curiosity for 7 days. And now this week, practice compassion for 7 days. And come back in here into our Facebook group, Food Freedom for Fempreneurs. You don't have to be a fempreneur to be included. And tell us how it goes. Tell us how this goes for you. If you want to listen to these replays, you can always find the replays at leahpinelli.com/podcast. Or you can log into our Facebook community here and you can go to the top where it says videos and all of the replays are there. I mean, use this space. I'm here. We're all here to support you. So use this space, share, ask questions, and join the Fempire for F's sake, right? Like we are doing it in there. We have one client in there who just shared that she has lost over 20 pounds now. And I promise you, she does exactly what I'm teaching you right now. She is practicing. She's not perfect at compassion and curiosity. She's not perfect at it, but it's a practice. Just like I said last week, it's a practice. All right, y'all. It's been 30 minutes. Thank you all for joining me today. If you want to know more about the Fempire, you can head over to leahpinelli.com and just request a chat with me, or you can DM me here on Facebook, or just drop the word Fempire in the comments and I will reach out. Ciao.
You've been listening to The Life You Crave. I lost 30 pounds years ago without dieting, willpower, or deprivation. I'm on a mission to help other women, including you, do the same. You can book a free weight loss strategy session with me over at leahpinelli.com. That's LIAPINELLI.com. See you on our next call or on the next episode. And remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on iTunes.